The Volturian Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. They had conquered 17 star systems and brought more than 40 different alien species under their control. Every civilization they encountered eventually joined them. Some joined willingly, grateful for the technology and protection the Empire offered. Others resisted at first, but they always gave in eventually. The Empire was simply too powerful to refuse. High Ambassador Zeltrix sat in his private chambers aboard the flagship, Eternal Dominion. He was reviewing reports about a newly discovered species on a small blue planet called Earth. These creatures called themselves humans. They had only recently developed space travel, and their technology was primitive by galactic standards. Their fastest ships could barely reach their nearest planetary neighbor in a few months. They had no shields, no energy weapons, and no knowledge of faster-than-light travel. Zeltr-IX found them almost amusing. They were like children playing with toys, pretending to be explorers. But the Empire had a use for every species, no matter how primitive. He ordered his diplomatic fleet to make contact. Captain Daniel Brooks was 43 years old. He had spent 20 years in the United Earth Space Force, working his way up from a young pilot to the commander of humanity's first true interstellar vessel, the Endurance. The ship was humanity's greatest achievement. It had taken 15 years and the combined resources of 12 nations to build. It could travel faster than any vessel humans had ever created, though it was still painfully slow compared to what science fiction writers had imagined. Daniel was a calm man. His crew respected him because he never panicked, never raised his voice, and always made decisions based on facts rather than fear. He had a wife named Margaret waiting for him back on Earth, and 2 daughters who sent him video messages every week. He thought about them often during the long, quiet nights in Space. On this particular day, Daniel was drinking coffee on the bridge when Lieutenant Katie Morgan spoke up from her station. "Captain, I'm detecting something strange on long-range sensors." Daniel set down his cup. "Define strange, Lieutenant." Katie was 28 years old, brilliant with computers, and had a habit of biting her lower lip when she was nervous. She was biting it now. "Sir, there are ships approaching our position. Big ships. At least 30 of them. And they're moving faster than anything I've ever seen." Daniel walked over to her station and looked at the screen. The readings made no sense. Nothing could move that fast. Nothing human, anyway. How long until they reach us? At their current speed, 4 minutes. Daniel felt his heart beat faster, but his face remained calm. He pressed the ship-wide communication button. "All hands, this is the captain. We have incoming vessels of unknown origin. This is not a drill. Everyone to their stations immediately." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos. Officers ran to their positions. Weapon systems came online, though Daniel knew their weapons would be useless against ships that advanced. 3 minutes and 47 seconds later, the alien fleet dropped out at whatever impossible speed they had been traveling. They surrounded the Endurance like wolves circling a rabbit. Katie's voice was barely a whisper. "Captain, the smallest of those ships is bigger than our largest space station." Daniel stared at the view screen. The alien vessels were beautiful in a terrifying way. They were smooth and silver, covered in lights that pulsed like heartbeats. Each one could probably destroy Earth without much effort. "They're hailing us," Katie said. "Put it through." The view screen flickered, and Daniel found himself looking at High Ambassador Zeltrix for the first time. The alien was tall and thin, with gray skin and large black eyes. He wore robes of deep purple, and when he spoke, his words were translated by some invisible technology that made them sound almost human. "Greetings, Captain. I am High Ambassador Zeltrix of Volturian Empire. We have been watching your species with great interest. You have achieved much for such a young civilization. We are impressed. Daniel straightened his uniform. Thank you, Ambassador. I am Captain Daniel Brooks of the United Earth Space Force. We come in peace. Zeltrix made a sound that might have been laughter. Of course you do. You have no other choice. But do not worry, Captain. We also come in peace. In fact, we come with gifts. Over the next hour, Zeltrix explained what the Empire was offering. The list was incredible. They would give humanity faster-than-light technology that would allow them to cross the galaxy in days instead of centuries. They would share medical advances that could cure every disease known to humans and extend their lifespans by 300 years. They would provide unlimited clean energy that would end poverty and hunger on Earth forever. Daniel listened carefully, waiting for the catch. It came at the end. In return, Zeltrix said, we ask only that humanity join the Empire as a protectorate species. You would be under our protection and guidance. You would follow our laws and contribute to our great civilization. It is a small price for everything we offer. Daniel asked for time to consult with Earth. Zeltrix agreed, giving humanity 1 week to make their decision. Back on Earth, Admiral Patricia Dunn received the transmission in her office at the Global Defense Center. She was 61 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had fought in 3 wars during her career, and she recognized a trap when she saw one. She called an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council. Leaders from every major nation gathered within hours, either in person or through secure video links. They're offering us everything we've ever dreamed of, the Chinese representative said. How can we refuse? Because nothing is free, Admiral Dunn replied. They want us to give up our independence. They want us to become their subjects, their pets. But look at what we gain, the European representative argued. Technology that would take us 1,000 years to develop on our own. Cures for cancer, for aging, for death itself. Admiral Dunn stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting over the city. Children were playing in a park below. Normal life continued, unaware that humanity's future was being decided in this room. If we accept, she said quietly, we will never stand on our own. We will never know what we could have become. We will always be lesser members of their empire, following their rules, living under their shadow. She turned back to face the council. Is that the future we want for our children? For their children? The debate continued for 3 days. In the end, they put it to a vote. The result would shock the galaxy. News traveled fast across the Voltorian Empire. Within days, every species under Imperial control had heard the story of the strange creatures from the planet called Earth. They had refused the Empire's offer. They had said no to technology, to medicine, to protection. They had chosen to remain alone and primitive rather than accept help. Most Imperial citizens thought the humans were insane. What kind of species would reject such a generous offer? What kind of foolish pride would make them choose suffering over comfort? The common opinion was that humans were simply too stupid to understand what they were giving up. But not everyone felt that way. On the agricultural world of Thiessen Prime, a young female named Swula worked in the fields with thousands of other Cathri. Her species had joined the Empire 4 generations ago. They had been a proud people once, with their own culture and traditions. Now they grew food for other worlds and followed imperial laws without question. Most Cathri had forgotten what freedom felt like. Swula's grandmother was different. She remembered the old days, before the Empire came. She remembered when the Cathri made their own decisions. She told Swula stories about that time, stories that were forbidden under imperial law. When Swula heard about the humans, she found her grandmother in their small living quarters after the workday ended. Is it true? Swula asked. Did they really refuse? her grandmother's bioluminescent markings, the patterns that showed Kethri emotions, flickered with something Swula had never seen before. It took her a moment to recognize it. Hope. They did, her grandmother whispered. They looked at everything the Empire offered, and they said no. They chose to be free. Swula tried to understand. But why? They could have so much. Her grandmother touched her face gently. Child, there are some things more valuable than comfort. More valuable than long life or advanced technology. Our ancestors understood this. We have forgotten, but perhaps these humans will remind the galaxy what freedom truly means. Similar conversations were happening on dozens of worlds throughout the Empire. Whispers spread through markets and workplaces. The story of humanity's refusal became something almost legendary. For species who had surrendered to the Empire long ago, it was a reminder of what they had lost. For species who were still considering the Empire's offers, it was proof that saying no was possible. High Ambassador Zeltrix was aware of these whispers. He reported them to the Imperial Council on the capital world of Valtoria Prime. The Council was concerned. They had never faced this kind of problem before. The humans must be punished, one council member argued. Their defiance encouraged rebellion among our subjects. No, another disagreed. Attacking them would only make them martyrs. It would prove that the Empire uses force when diplomacy fails. Then what do you suggest? The debate continued for hours. In the end, the council reached an unusual decision. They would not attack humanity. They would not offer their gifts again. They would simply watch and wait. Eventually, the humans would face a threat they could not handle alone. When that happened, they would come begging for help. And the Empire would be generous enough to accept their surrender. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity was working harder than ever before. Dr. Marcus Webb led the newly formed Global Research Initiative. He was 52 years old, with messy gray hair and glasses he constantly forgot to clean. He had spent his life studying physics, dreaming of discoveries that seemed impossible. Now, thanks to the Voltorian visit, he had clues that made those discoveries possible. They made a mistake, he told his team of scientists on their first day together. They showed us their ships. They demonstrated their technology. They thought it would frighten us, but instead, they gave us a starting point. They showed us what was achievable. Engineer Lisa Grant was one of his brightest researchers. She was 34 years old, practical and focused, with a talent for turning theoretical ideas into working machines. She had analyzed every second of footage from the Valtorian encounter. Their shields operate on some kind of energy field, she explained during one late-night meeting. I don't understand how yet, but I can see the patterns. If we can figure out the principles, we can build our own version. Physicist Anthony Bell, young and eager at 26, focused on propulsion. Their ships move faster than light. That's supposed to be impossible, according to our physics. But clearly, it's not impossible. We just don't understand the rules yet. Admiral Patricia Dunn provided whatever resources they needed. Governments around the world set aside their differences and contributed funding, equipment, and personnel. For the first time in history, humanity was truly united in a common goal: survival. The work was slow and frustrating. There were countless failures. Experiments that destroyed expensive equipment. Theories that led nowhere. Scientists who quit in frustration, convinced that they were wasting their time. But there were also breakthroughs. 3 months after the Voltorian departure, Lisa Grant's team created a working shield generator. It was weak, barely strong enough to stop a bullet, and it drained power at an alarming rate. But it worked. It proved that the principle was sound. This is just the beginning, she told her team, her eyes shining with excitement. Give us time, and we'll build shields that can stop anything. 4 months in, Anthony Bell's propulsion research made a crucial discovery. They couldn't travel faster than light, not yet, but they could travel much faster than before. Their new engine designs would allow ships to cross the solar system in days instead of months. 5 months in, construction began on humanity's first real space fleet. Shipyards that had never existed before rose from the earth. Factories worked around the clock, producing materials. Millions of people applied for positions in the new United Earth Space Force. Daniel Brooks, now promoted to admiral alongside Patricia Dunn, oversaw the construction from an orbital station. He spent his days reviewing ship designs, approving crew selections, and planning for threats that might come at any moment. At night, he talked to his wife Margaret through video calls. "Are you scared?" she asked him one evening. He thought about it honestly. "Yes," he admitted. "I'm terrified. We're building weapons to fight enemies we can't imagine, using technology we barely understand. One mistake could doom our entire species." "Then why do you keep going?" Daniel looked out the window at the blue curve of Earth below. He could see the lights of cities, the movement of clouds, the thin line of atmosphere that protected everything he loved. "Because someone has to," he said. "Because our children deserve a future where humans make their own choices. Because I would rather die fighting than live as someone else's pet." Margaret smiled through her tears. "That's why I married you, Daniel." In the darkness of space, the Voltorian observation fleet watched and recorded everything. They saw the shipyards being built. They detected the new shield experiments. They analyzed the improved propulsion systems. Commander Veth reported these developments to Ambassador Zeltrix with growing concern. "They are advancing faster than predicted," Veth said. "At this rate, they could become a genuine threat within a few decades." Zeltrix studied the reports carefully. "Interesting," he murmured. "Most species become dependent on our technology. These humans are using our refusal as motivation to develop their own. Should we intervene?" Zeltrix shook his head slowly. "No, the Council has ordered observation only. Besides, I find myself curious. I want to see how far they can go." He looked at the images of human shipyards, human scientists, human soldiers training for wars they might never fight. "They are either the bravest species we have ever encountered," he said quietly, "or the most foolish. Perhaps both." 6 months after first contact, humanity had 47 warships ready for combat. They were crewed by galactic standards with weak shields and primitive weapons. But they were armed. They were crewed by determined men and women, and they were ready to defend their home. They would need to be, because something else had noticed Earth, something hungry, something that saw the unprotected planet as easy prey, and it was coming. The Craxians were monsters by any definition. They traveled between stars in massive ships, looking for civilizations too weak to defend themselves. When they found one, they took everything: resources, technology, and most importantly, slaves. They captured entire populations and sold them throughout the darker regions of the galaxy. The buyers who asked no questions about where the merchandise came from. The Voltorian Empire tolerated the Craxians because they were useful. They cleaned up primitive species that the Empire did not want to bother with. They stayed away from Imperial territory and never attacked protected worlds. It was an unspoken agreement that benefited both sides. When the Craxians learned about Earth, they were delighted. Here was a young species, recently discovered, with no Imperial protection. Their technology was primitive. Their defenses were weak. They would make excellent slaves. A raiding fleet of 12 ships set course for the Sol system. On Earth, the warning came from the most unexpected source. The Voltorian observation fleet detected the Craxian approach and actually transmitted a message to human command. "Incoming hostile vessels," the message stated. "Craxian raiders. They are not part of our empire. We cannot interfere. This is your warning." Admiral Patricia Dunn received the message at 3 in the morning. She was in her office within minutes, reading the report with cold dread in her stomach. "How long do we have?" she asked her aide. 6 hours until they reach Mars orbit. 8 hours until they reach Earth. Patricia picked up her communicator and made the call she had hoped she would never have to make. Admiral Daniel Brooks was sleeping on the orbital station when his emergency alert went off. He was in the command center within 3 minutes, still pulling on his uniform jacket. "Talk to me," he said. The tactical officer, a young man named Kevin Park, pulled up the sensor data. 12 ships, Admiral. Each one is roughly twice the size of our largest vessel. We're detecting heavy weapons and some kind of troop transport capacity. What are our options? Kevin hesitated. "Honestly, sir, we can evacuate key personnel underground. Hide as many people as possible. Hope they only take some of us." Daniel shook his head. "No, we don't hide. What's our combat strength?" 47 ships ready for deployment. Another 12 in various stages of construction, but they're not space-worthy yet. Crew status. All ships are fully staffed. Everyone has been through basic combat training, but Kevin trailed off. "But none of us have ever actually fought in space," Daniel finished. "I know, neither have I." He looked at the sensor display, at the red dots representing the incoming enemy. "Send out the order. All ships to launch positions. We meet them at Mars." Within 2 hours, the entire human fleet was assembled in space. 47 ships, ranging from small fast attack craft to larger cruisers. They formed up around the Endurance, which had been upgraded and now served as the fleet flagship. Daniel stood on the bridge, looking at the faces of his crew. Lieutenant Katie Morgan was at her station, her fingers steady on the controls despite the fear in her eyes. Chief Engineer Sam Cho was monitoring the ship's new shield generator, making last-minute adjustments. Weapons Officer Maria Santos was running targeting calculations, preparing for a fight that no simulation could have prepared them for. "Open a channel to all ships," Daniel ordered. The communication officer nodded. "Channel open, Admiral." Daniel took a breath. He thought about his wife and daughters. He thought about his parents, who had passed away believing their son would never see actual combat. He thought about every human being on Earth, going about their daily lives, trusting people like him to keep them safe. "This is Admiral Brooks," he began. "In a few hours, we will face our first real test as a species. The enemy coming toward us has destroyed civilizations before. They expect us to be easy prey. They expect us to surrender or die." He paused, letting his words sink in across 47 ships. "They are wrong. We are human beings. We do not surrender. We do not give up. Our ancestors survived ice ages with nothing but stone tools. They crossed oceans in wooden ships. They walked on the moon with technology weaker than the phones in your pockets. Now it's our turn to show the galaxy what humans can do." He could hear the sounds of ships preparing for battle, the hum of engines, and the whine of weapons charging. "Some of us will not survive today. I won't lie to you about that. But I promise you this. Every single one of us who falls will be remembered as a hero. And those who survive will tell our story for generations. Today, we fight for everyone we love. Today, we fight for Earth. Today, we fight for humanity." He ended the transmission and sat down in his command chair. "All ships," he said calmly, "move to intercept positions." The Craxian fleet commander was named Rethax. He was old by Craxian standards, with countless raids behind him. He had captured millions of slaves in his career and had never lost a battle. When his sensors detected the human fleet moving to meet him, he laughed. "They're actually going to fight?" he said to his bridge crew. "With those pathetic little ships?" "It appears so, Commander," his tactical officer replied. Should we adjust our approach? Why bother? This will be over in minutes. All ships, prepare for combat. And try not to damage too many of them. Healthy slaves are worth more. The two fleets met near Mars. The Craxian ships were larger, better armed, and protected by shields that human weapons could barely scratch. By every logical measure, humanity should have been destroyed in the first exchange. But humans had never been logical. Admiral Brooks had studied every record of the Craxian attack that the Voltorians had provided in their warning. He noticed that Craxians were confident to the point of arrogance. They expected easy victories and never prepared for serious resistance. All small craft, execute pattern Delta, he ordered. Draw their fire. Keep moving. Don't let them target you. 20 small human ships scattered in different directions, moving erratically. The Craxian gunners tried to track them, but kept missing. These human pilots flew like they had nothing to lose, because they didn't. Main fleet moved to positions behind the asteroid field. Use the rocks for cover. The larger human ships slipped behind the scattered asteroids near Mars. Craxian weapons were powerful, but they couldn't shoot through solid rock. Now, Daniel said, launch the missiles. Human weapons couldn't penetrate Craxian shields directly, but Lisa Grant's engineering teams had figured out a workaround. They had designed missiles that didn't try to break shields. Instead, they targeted engines, which extended beyond the shield envelope during acceleration. Hundreds of missiles streaked toward the Craxian fleet. The raiders shot down most of them, but not all. One Craxian ship shuddered as missiles tore through its engine section. Then another. Then a third. Commander Rethex stared at his display in disbelief. 3 of his ships were crippled, drifting helplessly. No primitive species had ever done that before. All ships focus fire on their flagship. He roared. The remaining Craxian vessels turned their weapons toward the Endurance. Heavy energy beams sliced through space, tearing asteroids apart as they searched for the human command ship. Shields holding at 40%, Katie reported, her voice tight. 30%, 20. All ships covering fire, Daniel ordered. Every human vessel that could manage it fired at the Craxians, not to destroy them, but to disrupt their aim. The concentrated fire forced the raiders to spread their attacks across multiple targets. The battle lasted 2 hours. 8 human ships were destroyed completely. 93 crew members died. The Endurance nearly lost power twice. At one point, Daniel had to order everyone to brace for impact as a Craxian beam tore through their outer hull. But humans kept fighting. Every time a ship was disabled, the crew would continue firing until they had nothing left. Pilots who should have retreated kept attacking. Engineers performed impossible repairs under combat conditions and slowly. Impossibly, the tide turned when the 11th Craxian ship went dark. Commander Rethax made a decision he had never made before in his long career. He ran. The last Craxian vessel fled the Sol system at maximum speed, broadcasting warnings on all frequencies. Stay away from Earth. These creatures are insane. They don't know when to quit. On the bridge of the damaged Endurance, Daniel Brooks slumped in his chair. His uniform was torn and stained with smoke. His hands were shaking. Around him, his surviving crew members were crying, laughing, and hugging each other. "Admiral," Katie Morgan said, tears streaming down her face. "We won. We actually won." Daniel looked out at the battlefield. Human ships were moving among the wreckage, searching for survivors. Rescue beacons were flashing in the darkness. "We lost 93 people," he said quietly. "Don't forget them." "We won't," Katie promised. "None of us will." Far away, aboard the Eternal Dominion, High Ambassador Zeltrix watched the battle recording for the 3rd time. His hands were clasped behind his back, his expression unreadable. Commander Veth stood beside him, equally silent. "They won," Beth finally said. "They actually won." Zeltrix nodded slowly. "Yes, they did. And everything has changed because of it." 1 year had passed since humanity first met the Valtorian Empire. In that time, everything had changed. The battle against the Craxian raiders had become legendary, not just on Earth, but across the galaxy. Stories spread from world to world about the primitive species that had refused the Empire's gifts and then defeated a raiding fleet with nothing but courage and homemade weapons on Thesan Prime. Swula heard the news while working in the fields. She stopped what she was doing and looked up at the sky, imagining stars she could not see. "They won," she whispered to herself. They actually won. Around her, other Cathri workers had also paused. They did not speak openly about such things, but their bioluminescent markings flickered with something that had not been seen on this world for 4 generations. Hope on Earth. Humanity was building faster than ever. The victory against the Craxians had proven that they could defend themselves. Now they needed to ensure they could do it again. New shipyards opened every month. Research facilities expanded. Young people from every nation volunteered for the Space Force in numbers that overwhelmed the recruitment. Systems. Admiral Daniel Brooks spent most of his time in orbit now, overseeing the construction of humanity's first true battle station. It would be called Sentinel, and when completed, it would serve as the primary defense platform for the entire solar system. His wife Margaret had moved to the orbital station to be with him, and their daughters visited whenever school allowed. Admiral Patricia Dunn remained on Earth, coordinating the global defense network. She had become something of a symbol for human resistance, her face appearing on recruitment posters and news broadcasts. She hated the attention, but understood its necessity. Dr. Marcus Webb had made more progress in 1 year than he had expected to make in 20. His team had cracked the basic principles behind faster-than-light travel. They could not build a working drive yet, but they understood the theory. It was only a matter of time. Lisa Grant had improved the shield generators to the point where they could actually withstand light weapons fire. Not as good as Valtorian shields, but getting closer every day. Then came the message that changed everything. Hi. Ambassador Zeltrix requested a meeting with humanity's leaders. Not a demand, not an ultimatum, but a polite request. He proposed a neutral location, a space station to be constructed specifically for this purpose, in an empty region between Sol and the nearest Imperial system. The United Earth Council debated for days. Some argued it was a trap. Others believed the Empire simply wanted to reassert its dominance after the embarrassment of the Craxian defeat. But in the end, curiosity won out. They agreed to the meeting. Construction of the neutral station took 3 months. Human engineers worked alongside Voltorian builders, the first real cooperation between the two species. The station was simple but elegant, with sections designed for human comfort and sections designed for Voltorian physiology. Admiral Patricia Dunn led the human delegation. She was joined by Admiral Daniel Brooks, Dr. Marcus Webb, and a dozen other representatives from Earth's government and military. They arrived in a convoy of 5 ships, an honor guard that demonstrated humanity's new capabilities. High Ambassador Zeltrix was waiting for them in the main conference chamber. He stood alone, without his usual escort of guards and advisors. He wore simple robes instead of his formal diplomatic attire. "Thank you for coming," he said as the humans entered. "Please, sit. We have much to discuss." Patricia remained standing. "With respect, Ambassador, we would prefer to hear why we're here first." Zeltrix inclined his head. "Of course. Direct and to the point. I have learned to expect this from humans." He walked to the window that looked out at the stars. 1 year ago, I came to your world with an offer. I represented the greatest power in the galaxy, and I offered you everything. Technology, medicine, protection. All you had to do was accept our guidance. We remember, Patricia said coolly. You refused. Zeltrix turned to face them. At the time, I thought you were fools. I expected you to fail. I expected you to come crawling back, begging for the help you had rejected. Sorry to disappoint you. On the contrary. Zeltrix's expression was difficult to read, but there was something in his voice that sounded almost like admiration. You have done something no species has done in 3,000 years. You refused our offer, built your own path, and defended your world against enemies that should have destroyed you. You have earned something that cannot be given, respect. The human delegation exchanged uncertain glances. The Imperial Council has been watching your species very closely, Zeltrix continued. They have debated your fate for months. Some wished to destroy you before you became a threat. Others wanted to leave you alone until you destroyed yourselves. But I argued for a third option. He produced a small device and activated it. A holographic document appeared in the air, filled with text in both human and Valtorian languages. This is a new kind of agreement, Zeltrix explained. We are not offering you protectorate status. We are not asking you to join the Empire as subjects. Instead, we are offering partnership. As equals. Patricia stared at the document. What exactly does that mean? It means full access to Imperial trade networks. Technology exchange without requirements or obligations. Mutual defense agreements that go both ways. You would retain complete sovereignty over your world and your people. You would make your own laws, follow your own customs, and chart your own course through history. And what do you get in return? Zeltrix was quiet for a moment. Truthfully, we get the hope of renewal. The Empire has grown stagnant over 3,000 years. Our subject species have lost their spark. They follow orders, they produce resources, they serve their purpose. But they no longer dream. They no longer strive. They have forgotten what it means to build something from nothing. He looked at the human delegation with something like wonder. Your species has reminded us what that looks like. The Council believes that partnership with humanity might reawaken qualities we have lost in ourselves and in our subjects. You have something we cannot buy or conquer, the spirit of a people who would rather die free than live as slaves. Daniel Brooks stepped forward. This is very different from what you offered before. Yes, it is. You made it very clear that you would never accept anything less. So we adapted. We learned. Another quality we had forgotten, the ability to change. Patricia took the document and studied it carefully. The others gathered around her, reading the terms. The agreement was everything Zeltrix had described. Full equality. Complete freedom. No hidden clauses or future requirements. This will need to be reviewed by our government, Patricia said finally. Approved by our people. We don't make decisions like this quickly. We would expect nothing less. Zeltrix bowed slightly, a gesture of genuine respect. Take all the time you need. We have waited 3,000 years for a species like yours. We can wait a little longer. The human delegation returned to their ships. The journey back to Earth was quiet. Everyone was processing what had just happened. The most powerful empire in the galaxy had essentially admitted that they were impressed. More than impressed. They wanted to learn from humanity. When they arrived home, the news spread quickly. The terms of the proposed partnership were made public. Every citizen of Earth was given a chance to review them and share their opinion. The debate lasted for months, but in the end, the vote was overwhelming. Humanity accepted the partnership. On their terms. At their pace. With full transparency. The signing ceremony took place on the neutral station. Broadcast lived to every screen on Earth and throughout the Valtorian Empire. Admiral Patricia Dunn signed for humanity. High Ambassador Zeltrix signed for the Empire. As the ceremony concluded, Zeltrix approached Patricia privately. "I have a confession to make," he said quietly. "When you first rejected our offer, I was angry. I thought you were arrogant and foolish. I hoped you would fail. What changed your mind?" Zeltrix considered the question. "Watching you fight. Not just the battle itself, but everything leading up to it. The way your species came together. The speed of your development. The absolute refusal to accept defeat. I have seen many species in my career, Admiral. I have never seen anything like humans." Patricia allowed herself a small smile. "We can be pretty stubborn when we want to be. That you can." Zeltrix extended his hand, a human gesture he had clearly practiced. "I believe this is how your species seals agreements between individuals." Patricia shook his hand. "It is. Welcome to the partnership, Ambassador." In the years that followed, the galaxy continued to change. Human explorers traveled to distant stars. Human scientists collaborated with Imperial researchers, each learning from the other. Human ideas about freedom and self-determination spread to species that had forgotten those concepts. On Thesan Prime, Swula eventually led a movement for Kethri autonomy. It took decades, but her people finally regained the right to govern themselves. She always said that humans had shown her it was possible. Admiral Daniel Brooks eventually retired to Earth, where he lived quietly with his wife and watched his grandchildren grow up in a world he had helped save. He was remembered as a hero, though he never thought of himself that way. He was just a man who had done what needed to be done. Admiral Patricia Dunn became the first human ambassador. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was a place of wonder. Its walls stretched higher than any building on Earth, made of crystal that caught light from 100 different stars. 12 ancient species sat in their floating chairs, looking down at the speaking platform below. They had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, and they believed they would rule it for 10,000 more. Ambassador Elena Marsh stood on that platform. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes. She had served humanity in this hall for 20 years. In all that time, she had never raised her voice. She had never made demands. She had always smiled, always nodded, always found ways to agree. The counselors liked her because she caused no trouble. Today, Elena was not smiling. "Honored counselors," she said, her voice steady. "I come before you to request justice for the people of New Cascadia." High Counselor Zyrith leaned forward in his chair. He was Aldani, a species that looked like tall gray shadows with too many eyes. His kind had founded the council, and they had never let anyone forget it. "We have already ruled on this matter," Zyrith said. The Vecturi acted within their rights. The territory was disputed. The matter is closed. Elena felt something crack inside her chest. She thought of the video she had watched. 4 million people. Families eating dinner. Children playing in parks. Old men feeding birds in the square. And then the sky turned white, and they were all gone. Burned to ash in seconds. The Vecturi had not even warned them. They had simply decided that the planet was theirs, and everyone on it needed to die. The territory was not disputed, Elena said. New Cascadia was a registered human colony for 80 years. The Vecturi claim was filed 3 days before their attack. A legal claim nonetheless, said Ambassador Veleth of the Kryn. He was a creature of blue scales and golden eyes, and he had always treated Elena with cold politeness. The humans should have evacuated while the matter was being reviewed. The review would have taken 10 years. You know this. Then perhaps your people should learn patience. Elena looked around the great hall. 12 species. 12 ambassadors. Not one of them would meet her eyes. She understood then, with perfect clarity, that justice would never come from this place. The strong did what they wanted. The weak suffered what they must. That was the only law that mattered here. She thought of her grandmother, who had died on New Cascadia. She thought of her childhood friend Maria, who had moved there with her 3 children. She thought of 4 million faces she would never see again. "I understand," Elena said quietly. "Thank you for your time." She walked out of the great hall. Behind her, the counselors returned to their other business. They had already forgotten about New Cascadia. It was such a small matter, after all. Just another weak species learning its place. Elena took a ship back to Earth. The journey lasted 3 days. She did not sleep. She did not eat. She simply sat in her cabin, staring at the stars, thinking about everything humanity had given to be part of galactic civilization. They had shared their art and music. They had opened their borders to tourists and traders. They had sent their young people to study on alien worlds. They had believed, truly believed, that friendship and cooperation could build a better galaxy, and the galaxy had responded by burning 4 million of them alive and calling it legal. President Daniel Cole met her at the spaceport. He was a tall man with kind eyes and a gentle voice. He had won his election by promising peace and prosperity. He had never wanted to be a war president. What did they say? He asked. Elena handed him the official ruling. He read it twice, as if the words might change. They did not. They ruled it legal, he said. They actually ruled it legal. Yes, 4 million people. Yes. Daniel was quiet for a long time. Around them, the spaceport hummed with activity. Ships came and went. People laughed and talked and lived their lives. They did not know yet. They did not know that their government was about to make a choice that would change everything. "Come with me," Daniel said. "There are people waiting." They drove to a building with no name. It sat in the middle of a forest, far from any city. Armed guards stood at every door. Elena had never been here before. She had not known it existed. Inside, she found a room full of people. Military officers, scientists, engineers. They all stood when Daniel entered. Their faces were hard and serious. "Tell them what the council said," Daniel told Elena. She told them. When she finished, no one spoke. The silence was heavy, like the air before a storm. Finally, an old admiral named Kevin Torres stood up. He had white hair and scars on his hands from battles fought long ago. "We always knew this day might come," he said. "We hoped it would not. We prayed it would not. But we prepared anyway." He pressed a button, and the wall behind him became a screen. Elena saw ships. Hundreds of ships. Thousands of ships. Warships of a kind she had never seen before, with weapons that made her blood run cold. "For 300 years, we showed the galaxy only what we wanted them to see," Kevin said. "Patrol boats, defensive platforms, peaceful explorers. But in secret, we built something else. Just in case." "Just in case of what?" Elena asked. "Just in case peace stopped being an option." Daniel walked to the front of the room. He looked at every face, one by one. "I need to know," he said. "If I give the order, can we win?" Kevin nodded slowly. "We can do more than win, sir. We can make sure nothing like New Cascadia ever happens again. Not to us, not to anyone." Daniel closed his eyes. Elena could see the weight pressing down on him. He was about to end 300 years of peace. He was about to unleash something that could not be taken back. "The council had a chance to do the right thing," he said. "They chose not to. So now we will do what we must." He opened his eyes. "Begin the mobilization and send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them humanity is withdrawing from all peace accords, effective immediately. Tell them we recommend non-interference." Elena felt tears on her cheeks. Not tears of sadness. Tears of something else. Something that had been sleeping inside humanity for 300 years. The galaxy had forgotten what humans were capable of when pushed too far. They were about to remember.